reality.
Yes.
You see Jesus do that,
Yeah,
right?
oh,
So we're not reinventing the wheel. It just goes back to the greatest person who's ever lived.
Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Heart of a Pastor. I'm here with Tyler Sweeney.
Good morning.
Hey man, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Awesome. So my name is Pastor Daniel. I'm one of the lead pastors at Resurrection Church, and this whole podcast idea, you were asking me, where did this idea come from? And I was trying to think, like, where did this come from? And I'll just give you the background story, because like literally all we do in these things is like talk about stories.
Sweet.
I was at the collective retreat with you and a bunch of other, like, I don't know, 20, 30 pastors or whatever.
Yeah.
And we had a series of evenings, like after the retreat, where we just sat around a campfire, and I was like, man, I don't know the pastors in my town well enough. And I see them here and there, but like, I need to know them. And so I started calling them and taking them out to coffee.
Cool.
And just like 2 hours of like, tell me about your church. Tell
Love
me
that.
why you're here. Tell me what's going on. Tell me how to pray for you. I mean, just that kind of stuff. And then I went, if people could be a fly on the wall during these conversations, I think that would be some of the best leadership training in ministry you could have.
I love that.
Because, man, I could tell you some textbooky stuff, and we could do some leadership, this and that. But if you heard the heart of pastors, oftentimes from different churches, the similarity and unity in the gospel, how Christ and the gospel brings us together regardless of like denominations and different churches, different areas, and different towns, you'd begin to realize some things about ministry and pastoral ministry and other places that I don't think there's any other way to teach you, right? And I'm a bit, we were talking about discipleship philosophy the other day, and authenticity is one of my big ones. Yeah. And so authenticity is like, man, how do you prove authenticity? That's an interesting sort of thing, right? And so I think the more we do things like this, the more people go, man, that's who they are.
Yeah.
And I think it gives a lot of, I think one of the most credible things you can do in 2024 is be who you are in private and in public, and they're the same people.
Yep.
And so like, this will be who I am. I mean, like, I'm wearing it, like, I'll probably get in trouble for wearing a Christian punk rock shirt, but this is the great Nate Parrish, so it doesn't really matter.
No trouble here. If anything, it makes me admire you more.
I mean, Nate Parrish is like, top two, not two.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Well, what you just said is really integrity, right?
Yeah.
Are you the same person in private as you are in public?
Yeah.
Right. If you're like sitting at home all by yourself, or you're preaching from stage, just be you. Just be you.
Well, I mean, gosh, the social media internet age is just a wreck, right? It's what a wreck of like, I need to be this way when other people see me, and I'm like, well, are you always that way?
Yeah.
If I can't talk about my insecurities and my failures and my mess and my weaknesses, and then I'm not actually who I am. So there's a whole. Yeah, that's a long rabbit trail.
Well, can I talk about one of my insecurities?
Okay, go for it.
Can we? Is that okay?
Yeah. Well, this is Tyler.
Hi, everyone.
Tell them where you're from, and then yeah.
I just want to be real. It's called The Heart of a Pastor, right?
Yeah.
My name is Tyler Sweeney.
Yeah.
I'm a pastor at Bayside Church.
Awesome.
Just hit 9 years. So for the first 5 years, I was a high school pastor up
Very
in
cool.
Sacramento at our Grand Bay campus. And the last 4 years, we've been down launching and leading our newest Bayside Orange County campus.
That's super cool, man.
Here we are.
Awesome.
Here we are.
So hit it.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
Insecurity.
Well, you just hit one of my top insecurities. And I talked about this last night at summer camp. I've struggled with performance-based living my entire life. So if you go StrengthsFinder, right? Like, my top strength is achiever. 2, 3, 4, 5 are all relational. Achiever can be very self-focused.
Yeah.
Right. Which is why one of my favorite sayings is the African proverb: if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. My challenge is to go far together. My go-to is just to blitz it and get it done.
Yeah. Well, and you're on the working genius model. You're a T.
Yeah.
Right. So task-oriented tenacity. You're gonna love to get things. You love checking boxes, right?
Oh, I
the
do.
chore list is done. You're like, it's done.
Boom! I feel accomplished. I feel great.
Right.
Yeah. So on the widget, I'm a GT. So I love people and galvanizing. But sometimes if you're taking a while, just hand it over, buddy.
Right.
I can get this done.
I'll get all those boxes checked for you.
Oh, 100%. And so really, like, I'm 34 years old. 4 years ago when I stepped into this role, I actually had a buddy, a really good friend of mine, Tom Gillis, call me out 6 months into leading this campus. And I just say, hey, Tom, we've known each other for, a few years now. And I just feel like there's something off. Is there something we could talk about? And he goes, yeah, Ty, I've actually been wanting to chat with you about this for a while. I just feel like the person that I see you at church is not the real Ty.
Ooh.
Boom. Ooh. Just didn't even strike a chord, just like gut punch, right? And it led to an over-hour conversation where Tom spoke the truth to me in love. He was real. He's an older brother in the faith, and he just said, bro, I'm talking to you about this because I ultimately care about you.
Right.
And I know who God has made you to be, and this is not it. And I'm bawling at the end of that conversation on the phone because it was so true. I was so concerned in the early days, especially about performing and being this, like trying to fit into this mold of a pastor that I thought my senior leaders wanted. How dumb is that?
Well, but you're at this vibrant church, right? Sure. It's grown, like loves the gospel, loves people, it's exploded in size, and like you got some of the best communicators in the world there, right? Totally. So like, I listen to Newhoff. I love Newhoff's interviews. He interviews like some of those interesting people in the world. I just like sit and listen. And he's interviewing a guy who started like a remote site for Andy Stanley. Okay. And he talked about being at the main campus with Andy Stanley when you're going to preach at the main campus, and the pressure that you put on yourself. He was very honest. Like no one put that on him. He put on himself because like, oh man, I'm going to preach. This is Andy Stanley's mic, and I'm going to walk out on Andy Stanley, and like he just talked about how it was like almost like debilitating.
Wow.
And I was like, oh gosh, yeah.
Oh, because here's the deal. I would get up on stage or in a video or whatever it was. Yeah. And it would be so self-focused. It's all about me. So the me monster is creeping up, which is ultimately pride. Yeah. Because I'm so focused on my image, my performance, and my doing a good job, whatever that looks like. But it's all like to the standard of man, and not to the heart of God. Like, God, who have you made me to be? And Daniel, I mean, we can unpack this more if you want. I've never felt more free today in my life than I've ever, and I'm a work in progress, right? As Paul says, I'm a wretched man. But by the grace of God, I've never felt more free. But that was a journey.
But there's something about like so the Christianese kind of thing that we would throw around is identity in Christ, right? Yeah. And what I would tell people is like, when I say identity in Christ, what I mean is like this self-confidence that's not really a self-confidence. It's a confidence that, man, God's made me this way. I am a work in progress. I am kind of a mess. When you know you're a mess, but God has still redeemed you. He still loves you. He's still using you for ministry or other things. When you know that, then you can admit that, right? And it's so much easier to live, because when you make a mistake, you go, yeah, I messed that up. Like when you can't admit mistakes, then like life actually gets really hard.
Totally.
Because you're always worried about, I hope they don't think I am making a mistake. I hope they don't think, so there is a performative side of that. I want to perform well. Okay. I'm also an achiever. I want to, so I think that the bar of quality, let's say for ministry, for preaching, for leading, should be really high. And I also know I'm going to miss it a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I guess I feel like it's probably more like darts or something, where like I'm probably not going to hit a lot of bullseye, and I'm not going to like, I think I could get better at that. I'll try,
Well, just like most things in life, there's pros and cons. Right. I mean, Paul in the New Testament, the Bible says, run the race to win the prize. Right. Like that's not, just be kind to everyone around you and hope things work out. It's like, no, go for it, man. We got one life to live, one life to give, as one of my mentors, John Harris, says. And I want to make sure this life I'm living, I'm giving it my all. But at the end of the day, here's the temptation is to take that mentality, and it can quickly become so self-absorbed.
Right.
It's all about you.
Yeah.
Right. But when you realize, no, I don't care if I'm at home with my wife, with my kids, at a coffee shop with a group of people that I'm doing life with, or I'm preaching from stage in front of hundreds. I just want to be me. What does Craig Rochelle say? People would rather follow a leader who's always real than someone who's always right.
Absolutely.
And I just want to be real. I'm tired of trying to be right. And I would say this, one thing you said, Daniel, that struck a chord with me a minute ago was, I want to do a good job and make sure that I'm not making mistakes. But there's another level where this insecurity with me runs deep, because I've questioned, as I was telling you earlier, am I the right person for this role? So not just, and the things that I'm doing, is that right or wrong, good or bad? Do I need to adjust and tweak some things? That's like one level. But a level deeper is, no, ultimately, am I the right person for this? And that comes down to identity.
Well, it does. And it also, like, this is where all of the science, and I love leadership, I love personality tests, I love reading these things, and I find them interesting, and I want to get better, and I'll listen to podcasts, all that. That's great. I'm not
Sure
saying those things are bad. I participate in all of them and learn from them. But at the same time, there's a rootedness in calling that if you are seeking God, and I'm on this thing, like, you're seeking his face, right? I was reading this morning, be still and know that I am God. Like, shut up, stop all this stuff. Like, am I in charge?
Wow.
Right? Yeah. Okay. Did I call you here? Yeah. It's kind of done, right? Like God equips those he calls. He doesn't call those he quits. Like, if he called you, then you are the right person for the job.
That's it.
It doesn't matter what the personality thing says. It doesn't matter if you fit the mold of another leader you admire. I admire people that are not like me. I don't have to be them. The old phrase of, like, being comfortable in my own skin.
That's it.
Right? God called me with all my infallibility, with all my fallibility, all my mess. He called me.
Yeah.
Therefore, I'm gonna. Mark Clark said something in a video series I watched, and I don't know if he remembers this because it was a long time ago. But he said, "I wanna work like I'm an Arminianist." And I want to sleep like I'm a Calvinist.
I remember that quote.
Okay.
Yeah. So I took classes on this in college and seminary, right? And then he says it succinctly in one sentence.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's all I need.
Okay. Yeah.
I can two truths at the same time, right? God has given us free will, but at the end of the day, when I lay my head down, the whole world's in his hands. He is sovereign. He is all powerful, and I'm not.
So I wrote this on my whiteboard. From that, I wrote on the whiteboard, says, let's work like souls are at stake because they are.
Ooh.
Okay. So there's an urgency. I'm an urgent guy, man. I want to be better. I want to get better. I want to reach people. I want to make an impact, but I'm going to go home tonight and I'm going to hang out with my family.
That's it.
And I'm going to go to sleep because God's in charge.
Come on.
And I'm going to get up tomorrow and I'm going to work hard.
Yeah.
Right. And that duality we have to be okay with.
Well, yeah,
in ministry.
Right? And in that duality, there's tension, just like other things in life, right? So we live in a culture that loves to polarize and choose sides and pick extremes, right? So I don't even need to get into politics. That's not what this podcast is about. But if you go, if you go all work, right? You just turn into a machine. If you go all play, you're not living your life on mission.
No, tension's a great word, and I love tension. In fact, we don't do our version of membership is called ownership. And to do that, you take a class called the 6 Tensions of a Healthy Church. And the whole point of that is that problems have solutions. So you solve problems and you're done with them.
Yeah.
But tensions you never solve. You live with the tension, right? Yeah. And so there's always a pull between two things, and you're managing that friction, that tension, and it doesn't go away.
Yeah.
And like, it's not supposed to go away.
Right.
It's actually supposed to be managed, and you're supposed to live with it.
Yeah.
It's okay. Right?
But like human tendency is we want to run from tension because it's uncomfortable. As my friend Caleb Kaltenbach will show visually, if you pull a rubber band, the most tension is found in the middle. And yet, ironically, that's where Jesus calls us to stand.
Right in there.
Live and operate. So
it was Brene Brown that said, you can have courage. You can have courage or you can have comfort, but you can't have both.
Wow.
And the problem is, especially for you and I, we live in one of the wealthiest countries in the world, in one of the wealthiest times of the world.
True.
And so we're in a society that is driven by comfort, right? I mean, just driven by comfort, convenience, ease, right? Like, we're mad if the drive-through took 3 more minutes.
Oh yeah.
If the microwave takes too long. I mean, like we're mad if Starbucks doesn't have our order there by the time we walk. I mean, like
100%.
The level of convenience and comfort we expect in life is at this all-time high, and yet the gospel is so anti-comfort.
Ooh.
Like everything about the gospel is anti-comfort, other than a comfort in Christ.
Yeah, you find your identity in Christ.
In Christ. Everything else, man, trials, suffering, persecution.
Pick up your cross daily and follow me. What do you think that means?
Right.
Jesus picked up his cross and walked to his death. And that's the imagery he gives us to model as his followers.
So we started off hot,
Yeah.
Let me back up and go.
Sure.
You family situation, you're married, kids.
Yeah. So I married my high school sweetheart. We're just one of those couples that I worked out and asked her to freshman homecoming and been together ever since. So my wife, Allie, is the best, big time dreamer, smart, strategic. We've been married just now over 12 years. We got 2 kids.
Awesome.
So we have a daughter, Lucy, who's 5, and our main man, Jude, who's 3.
Man, what a time.
It's a fun season. Try to take it moment by moment.
Yeah. And there are seasons to this where like this is a fun season. And then there's a season where like that 8 through 12 season where they're pretty articulate, intelligent. Like, I mean, like really like driving you on concepts. And you're like, man, they're a lot of fun. And then there's the teenage years. And actually, they're still a lot of fun. So like you're going to go through these, where every one of them is unique. It's like 3 great desserts, right? They're all good, but you're like, oh, that's different.
Different. That's it. And different isn't bad. I mean, you got 4 kids that are older now, right? So you know this way more than I do. But yeah, we're trying to actually early on when our daughter was born, we got caught saying, oh, I can't wait until Lucy can crawl. I can't wait till she can walk. And that was our vernacular. That was our verbiage. And my wife challenged me and she just said, look, I do this too. Let's cut out that statement from our lives. Because guess what? We can wait.
Yeah.
We'll never have this season back.
Ever. And so right now, I have 2 daughters leaving the house. I have one that just went to Orlando. I have one this coming week that's going up north. And so I'm going to go from 4 to 2 in the home, right? And I'm like, man, that happened fast.
Big transition.
It happened. I mean, we were bringing them home from the hospital, it doesn't feel like that long ago, and they're gone. And I'm like, whoa.
Wow.
Yeah, you can wait.
Yeah, we're going to enjoy it today.
Enjoy it. Love it. Okay, so you were in Sacramento, but you're in Orange County now, right?
So originally from Southern California, like way back when my parents, when I was a baby, up until almost 4 years old, they were missionaries in Chile, South America.
Okay.
So then moved to NorCal after that. And then really when I was in the third grade, my dad got an associate pastor position in Southern California in Whittier.
Okay.
So we moved there and that's where my wife and I met. Those were my formative years, really like elementary through college. And then, my wife and I get married right after we graduate from APU, Azusa Pacific, and we were married 3 years. I'm going to Fuller Seminary, working as a youth pastor at a small church in Azusa, doing middle school, high school ministry. My wife takes a job with Target as a manager, paying the bills, bringing home the bacon so that I can do that and we can have that time together. And then all of a sudden at the very beginning of 2015, we hear from somebody at Bayside. I'd heard of the church. I didn't know a soul up there. And 3 months of interviewing and praying on it, we just knew deep down that was where God was calling us to.
That's cool.
So we load the U-Haul right after I graduate. My wife leaves her job at Target. We pack up the truck, drive up the 5, get to Sacramento, and we were there for 5 years until God called us back down here. Still the same church, different campus.
Right.
And launching a brand new campus here in SoCal.
And so how many campuses roughly at Bayside?
Yeah, 9.
9. And you're the 9th. You're the newest?
Yeah, we would be like number 8.
Okay,
Actually, Auburn, which is up like just north of Sacramento on your way to Lake Tahoe, that would be number 9. The one before us was actually Folsom Prison. So we have a campus in Folsom Prison too.
Yeah. Okay, and then 4 years now as a campus pastor, Orange County. I mean, like that's... All the other campuses are relatively close to Sacramento.
Oh, yeah.
Why in the world Orange County? I mean, like, how that is not close.
Yeah, we asked ourselves that too. My friend Wes Davis says Orange County in a lot of ways is the Bible Belt of California. And so even me, when they invited us into this conversation at the end of 2019 before COVID, that was all my questions. And it wasn't like an immediate move. I was telling you this recently. Like we prayed on it for 6 weeks because we were pretty set up there. And then God at the end of January 2020 was like, no, you're going back down.
And then COVID.
Yeah, just a little, global pandemic. Originally, though, we asked all those questions because I'm like, there's churches everywhere in Orange County. And that's where our lives were changed. Like my wife and I fell in love serving in youth group together. And that's where our small group leaders and youth pastors poured into us. And God used all those people to make us who we are today. But I said, there's so many great churches down there. Why are we going to plant another one? And we've asked that from the very beginning. Here's the deal. God opens up the doors. And he clearly opened up this one because there was a friend of our founding senior pastor at Bayside, Pastor Ray Johnston, who called him one day in 2019 and said, look, I know you're from Southern California because he and his wife, Carol. I know that people have been pressing you to launch a campus in Orange County for years or Southern California for years. Ray, to his credit, has always said no. And his response has been, it has to be God. We're not going to force this thing. Well, this guy who called him sat at the time on the board at Vanguard University and said, there's an opportunity to actually launch a new church here on campus at Vanguard, which is in Costa Mesa. Do you want to have a conversation? And I love Ray. He just goes, yeah, let's talk. Let's talk, take it one step at a time. If God wants to green light this and open the way, he will. And slowly but surely, God just continued to open up doors. They invited us into the conversation a little bit later. We took a visit, prayed on it, and here we are.
So 4 years in Orange County, you're on Vanguard campus, but you're right in the middle of a building campaign. I mean, you're up here, but so you're kind of in the middle, but you're also up in the heat. So
near the tail end of it.
Yeah.
So about 3 months ago, there's this amazing couple that's in our small group. They're in real estate. They find a piece of property 2 miles from our campus, so just down the road, still in Costa Mesa. And they said, hey guys, there's a church that's relocating, and this is for sale.
Wow.
And they negotiated an amazing deal. So long story short, we are in the final days of escrow for a new campus. Because right now we rent at Vanguard University, and we love that school. President Mike Beals, they're all amazing. But we rent 1 day a week on Sunday. This is going to be a new location, a building and a property that we get to own and operate 7 days a week for transformational ministry. So to say that we're excited, to say that this season is surreal is a gross understatement.
Yeah.
Because 35 days ago, Daniel, we set out to raise $2 million. Now we have a church of a couple hundred people.
Right.
Okay. 35 days ago, we put this to our church. Here's the grace of God and the generosity of his people, and said, here's the deal. It's a big number, but we need a down payment of $2 million in the next 35 days. Daniel, today, we are $1.933 million raised. Escrow closes in just over a week, and we have about $67,000 left to raise. God's going to do it. He's going to do it. And here we are. Hopefully in a few months, we're going to be in our new site and just trying to give him all the credit.
That's amazing.
We've had over 150 units give towards this cause. So over 50% of our church at least has stepped up and given. It might be actually closer to 200 people now.
That's wild.
I am humbled and more blown away as a pastor, as a person than I've ever been in my life, just seeing the generosity, the faith of our people rise up and say, if God wants this to happen, it's going to happen.
Man, if you're listening to this, you're not encouraged. I don't know. You get on the pulse, right? I've been through a building campaign to buy a building that we got offered out of the middle of nowhere and had to. I mean, like I know what you're saying, and to watch God's people has been one of the treasures of my life. Is to get to watch God work through people, and then you go, oh wow, I mean, oh wow,
it's humbling.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Congratulations. Early congratulations.
Oh, I appreciate that.
It's check it out.
Well, I was telling you earlier, I'm a very present-minded person. So to start thinking more futuristically, like from the start, this is only God.
Yeah.
He's going to use his people, but all the credit goes to him because we wouldn't be here. We wouldn't be operating. I mean, in our first year, right, it was, call us crazy, we launched in COVID because we are, but we had preview services all around campus, outside, wherever we could meet. We just hit, actually, it might be this week in August, 3 years ago, of being in our worship center at Vanguard and just taking it slow, but believing. And there's been good days, there's been hard days, there's been every day in between, just like anybody listening on this podcast knows. But we've just continued to set our eyes towards him. That's all we can do. And if he wants us to get this building, this property, and by the way, dude, like, the door, God opens up doors and he shuts doors. So if he still wants to shut this thing, he can.
Yeah.
And we have to be willing to be okay with that, as tough as it would be. But he just continues, it seems like, to open up doors. And people ask me all the time, little tangent here, like, Ty, what's your favorite thing going on? What do you love about your church? And my answer is always the same. It's the people. It's the people. That's been my answer from day one. And in the last 35 days, I've just seen the faith levels rise in our church. I've seen people go above and beyond. We have some families who have given not just one way, Daniel, but 3, 4, 5 different ways. We have people who've dipped into 401ks, taken out loans, selling their left arm to make this thing happen. And I'm just blown away.
Yeah.
It's cool.
That's awesome. But it also means like the move of God that occurs, right, to create and well up this generosity in people carries over into all these other areas. Yeah. And so, I mean, the beautiful thing is not just that you're going to potentially have this new building, which is great. It is going to be wonderful. You're going to get to do a lot of stuff with it. The impact on the people there, well, they will view ministry differently.
Yeah.
Like it just, oh wow, man. No, we saw God working. Now, nothing that you bring up it will seem nearly as challenging because we watched God do the impossible already. So let's, hey, Ty, what else is impossible? What else has God taken us, right?
That's it. I think it's going to allow us to dream.
Yeah.
Dream at levels that we would have never had before. And it creates ownership and buy-in it never would have. Our staff tells each other this, all the time last month. If someone would have written a $2 million check day one, would that have been nice and less stressful? 100%.
Yeah, but it would not. No.
That's it.
No.
But I would much rather have this where literally this is a team win. When we put the ball in the end zone, this is not because of one player on the team or one coach. This is everyone in the collective effort of the church.
So I have a really good friend and mentor that would say every once in a while, he would say something like, maybe I'll win the lotto and then we'll be able to go do this thing. And I had to take him aside at one point and kind of rebuke him really gently, hey, listen, that's a horrible thing. He's like, what do you mean? I go, man, if the God that rained manna down on his people to feed them, okay? If the God who fed his prophet with ravens, if the God who took a couple fish and a couple loaves of bread and fed thousands and thousands and thousands of people wanted to fund his church by letting you win the lotto or just inserting money into your bank account, he could and would. He doesn't.
Come on. Yeah.
He wants his church to be funded by obedient people learning sacrificial giving.
Yes.
And so because their heart changes, our heart changes when we're pulling against greed and self-interest and we're like, oh man. So Tim Keller would say that it's not just the actual definition of generosity is only giving when it hurts you. So if it doesn't impact your style of living, if it doesn't impact your level of living, you're not actually generous.
Wow.
You're giving out of the extra. That's not generosity. That's just you're just wealthy. Wow. And we are if you're in the U.S. and you're making I think it's $35,000 or $37,000 a year, which is not very much money. You're in the top 3% earners in the world globally. When the Bible talks about rich people, it's all of us because we live here, right? And so it's so weird to be in churches where they don't talk about giving, and I'm like, why would you not want to talk about giving?
Yeah.
But do you also not want to talk about sin? Do you also not want to talk about, Christ? These are fundamental things to our heart loves idolatry.
Yep.
And ain't nothing an idol like money. That's what the Bible says.
Yep.
I think your church will be so much healthier coming out of this. Not because you have a new building. That'll be great. Because the people are oh yeah, God did something.
Yeah.
Man. God did something.
Thank you. I agree too. And that definition by Keller is so spot on. I'm talking to my brother-in-law some years ago, and we're talking about this because he's a very generous person.
Yeah.
Naturally, I'm actually not a very generous person, at least with my money. I'm frugal by nature. My wife is the one who, her top love language is gift giving.
Mine too.
That's my last.
Yeah.
So think about this. Her birthday's coming up.
I know.
We just had her anniversary. Stress levels at an all-time high. How do you give a great gift to the greatest gift giver in the world? I'm you don't. You just admit your loss and try to do your best.
Yeah.
But my brother-in-law, Nick, he said, Ty, if giving doesn't hurt, you got to ask yourself, is it generous?
Yeah.
And I've always that hit me like a ton of bricks because I needed to hear that word. Not for our church or whatever. Tyler needed to hear that word. And it has shaped our generosity and giving. And here's the deal. Whenever my wife and I have an opportunity in front of us to give more, the latest one being this building campaign, we always pray about it together. But we pray about it separately, and we come back together and say, what did God tell you? And we always make sure that we make that joint decision together, but it has to hurt. And one of our pastors, Scott Shaw at Bayside, always says this. I love it. He said, it's not the amount, it's the attitude.
Yeah, for sure.
So what is the attitude of your heart? I had a young college student, sorry, one more tangent here, text me a month ago and say, hey man, just heard about this building campaign. As you know, I'm making pennies, but I want to tithe my part-time check. And he goes, I know it's a drop in the bucket, but here you go. Yeah. And I said, bro, this means more to the kingdom than you will ever know. Yeah. And it takes all of our drops in the bucket to cross this line and get to where we believe God is taking us.
Man, we did a big thing earlier this year where we got 100 leaders in a room, and we'd been fasting, praying, and we'd come up with these ideas. And so then from there, it was Ray who was there. Ray was like, well, this is going to take money. And so he challenged the whole room. He's like, all right. And he starts passing out these Bayside cards that are our thing, right? He's like, here. And I was
so good at it.
And he's like, we're all giving right now, right? You're taking this. And so we rolled out to the whole church 2 weeks later. We're like, okay, we did this as leaders. We want you to do this too. I get a text from a guy in Baltimore.
Huh.
He goes, "Hey, I watched this online. We used to go there, we moved and whatever. And like, I'm all in.
Wow.
All in. And I'm not Baltimore, I'm sorry. North Carolina.
Somewhere on the East Coast.
Tennessee.
There we go.
In the South.
Far from California.
Good Lord, not here. And he's like, I'm all in. And we don't even make much, but we're going to start tithing to your church. And I was like, okay, we should get to tithing up to your own church. But
exactly.
Thank you.
Cross that bridge when it comes.
Honored. But like those moments, right, where you're like, oh my Lord, like God's working all the way across the country, like changing people's hearts, right, making them generous, bringing men and women to Him.
It's amazing.
It's crazy.
It's beautiful. It really is.
So good. All right, what are you reading right now? What's shaping you?
Yeah. So the current book that I'm in, probably 2/3 of the way, is Shoe Dog by Phil Knight, owner of Nike. And Andrew McCourt from our staff read it, and so I got a copy. And I got to tell you, it's fun. One of the biggest organizations, I think they gross like $30 billion a year now on average. Just hearing the story, the heart behind it, I mean, all the obstacles that they had to get through. And honestly, I read it before bed at night because it helps me just like wind down and fall asleep. But I'm also learning a lot about perseverance and just like a can-do attitude. Like Phil's mentality from the beginning when they started with nothing was, this is going to win. This is going to win. And right now in the book, they're in this like legal battle right now. They're getting sued, and this is back in the 1970s, and it's just fun. It's just fun to hear the story, hear what they went through to get to where they are today. I think so many people, myself included, we look at successful businesses or companies or people, and we go, "Oh, that just happened." No. We want where they're at today. We don't want to do what they had to do to get there.
That's real.
And so to hear the story of Nike, it's just fun. Plus, like all the athletes in sports, and they actually started off. So Phil Knight was a cross country runner at University of Oregon.
So I watched the documentary. Well, not the film that was about signing Jordan.
Was it Air?
Air. I watched.
Yeah, with Matt Damon.
Yeah.
Cool. I haven't seen it yet. I'm waiting until I finish this book.
It's probably good because you would see you'll see the people in the book as like the actors, which I always like to read the book first. I ruined it.
I hear it's good.
No, it's pretty good.
Cool.
I'm not, I'm like the whole Phil Knight thing now because of the Oregon Ducks and I'm a SC grad. I'm
go Trojans.
I know. It's a little
not your cup of tea.
Yeah.
No, I'm a Trojans fan too.
Yeah.
But you can appreciate.
Oh my gosh, the movie was like really good.
Yep.
I don't know how accurate the movie was, but it was really good. What have you read over the course of the last 12 months that shaped you? Like what's had an impact?
Other than the Bible.
Other than the Bible. I hope you're reading the Bible all the time.
Please.
I hope you're reading the Bible all the time.
Please.
I hope it's shaping you. Gosh, if it's not, I don't even know how you're hearing from the Lord. He speaks to His word.
If I'm not, I shouldn't be on this podcast.
Good Lord. So, if you're not, I would just say, no. I wouldn't shame anyone not reading the Bible. Here's what I would tell you: you are missing out on a satisfaction and contentment and vibrancy in the Lord that you will not experience not in His word. It just it's not there. So it's not so. Yes, it's a discipline because there's times where it's hard, just like exercising or anything else. But man, everything good in my life has come from Christ, and almost all of that has come through His word.
Yeah,
and He speaks to me multiple times a day through His word, and so to not do that, it's like to be married and never talk to my wife or something, right? Like it doesn't compute for me.
Yeah, for sure.
Other than the Bible.
Well, I would say on that too, like at the end of the day, it's about a relationship. And take it from a guy who loves to tackle a to-do list. Even reading the word can just become another check.
Oh my gosh.
And you're like, why am I doing this?
Well, the worst is you read your Bible and then you finish and you go, I can't remember anything I just read.
Oh yeah.
Right? I was just...
You go throughout the rest of your day feeling good about yourself because you checked it off the box, but then you're like, hold on a second. Did it actually lead to transformation? Did it help my relationship with God?
Right.
It's never on Him. It's always on us because we're usually self-focused. So I think the Bible is an invitation to experience love, right? To experience a relationship with God. So no shame, no guilt at all. I miss it just as much as anybody else. But today I just kind of marinated earlier this morning on Psalm 92. That was it. And I'm doing I got a list or whatever of other stuff to read. So my old self would go, oh my gosh, I didn't get the other 5 passages I need. And I literally this morning was like, nope, I'm just going to marinate in this one for a little bit. Another book that I'm reading right now, or I've read in the last year, that's been great. Coach K's got a book, long-time successful basketball coach at Duke, called Leading from the Heart. And one thing I'm taking away from that, so many good principles. The guy's a genius. One thing I'm taking away from that is, as structured and strategic as he is, which strategic leaders I always try to learn from because I'm not naturally strategic by nature. As structured, strategic, calculated as he is, he always adapts his principles for the players on his team. He never coaches a single player the same exact way. So whether it's Grant Hill back in the early 90s or whoever it was moving forward, like for over like a few decades, how he unpacks adapting your leadership style, your values, your culture to the players that are now brought onto your team, I was blown away. I said, that's a next level leader right there.
It really
because
is. It's hard.
It is hard because it's easy just to kind of do the same old. Again, a guy like me who can get caught in going through the motions. Like, well, it worked for us 5 years ago, so it must work today. No. 5 years ago, COVID hadn't even happened yet.
Well, and it requires you to get an intimacy, a level of knowledge of the person, right?
Yep.
So you got to know them.
Yep.
And then in addition to knowing them, you're looking at context of, you're right, culture and neighborhood and time and season and everything. And that's a lot. It is.
That is. Well, and again, like I'm looking at this, or I'm reading the book. I'm going, Coach K, at this point, he's in his 60s or 70s, like so successful, numerous basketball championships, right, at Duke. He could very easily go, I got this.
All right.
You either conform to me or you're off. Now, here's the deal. The standard is at an all-time high. There's values that as a team member or a coach or a staff member of Duke, if you don't meet those values, you're gone. But he actually looks at the player and he goes, how are you wired? What makes you light up? How are you going to receive this coaching in a way that is leans into who you are as a player? What is he doing? He's actually valuing the person in front of them, regardless of title or position. So I'm learning a whole lot about that.
That's good.
That's good.
Have you ever read the book 7 Primal Questions? Okay, so I can't even say I read it. I sped read it, right? Because the idea behind it is that everyone is driven by one of 7 questions, and like life purpose, right? And so for me, it was really just going, well, give me the 7. I don't need to read the book. Like, give me the 7. And why do I want the 7? Well, one is to know myself, but the other, and this is the big one, is like, I want to be able to name your primal question. Because if I can name your primal question, boy, I understand how to motivate you and what how you click, what's going to matter to you, what's not. And so for me, it's, am I making an impact? So here's some other, like, am I safe? Am I valued? Am I loved? Like, there's some stuff like that, right? Those are not mine. Am I making an impact? Now, you can see where that can go really wrong in ministry, because I don't care about affirmation. Not that much. I mean, we all care a little bit about affirmation. Like, I care a lot, right? But I don't care that much about it. I care, am I making an impact? So you can tell me I'm doing a good job, but if I don't see impact, I'm not going to believe you.
Wow.
And so, but it drives me. There's an urgency to the gospel going forth, and people being discipled, people growing in the Lord, people coming to Christ, that if I'm not seen, man, I am restless and angsty and like just, and at the same time, I gotta be real careful, because I will roll right over people to make an impact. Yeah. Right. I mean, I'm a tank in a china shop, like bulldoze everybody. Yep. And like, my story really is one of mostly bulldozing until God finally had to break me so that I would be gentle, because I was just like impact. And like, most of the impact was negative, me rolling over people. Right. Anyways, yeah, that's been an interesting one.
I think that's good. I got to read it.
I think you'll enjoy it, even if it's just like, read the 7 questions. I Googled the 7 questions.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay, what am I?
Yeah.
It wasn't hard to figure out.
Well, it's funny to hear you say affirmation's not yours. Words of affirmation is my top love language. And so again, like, I forget that exact quote, but if you live by the praise of men, you'll fall by their criticism. Something like that.
That changes. I don't know when you last took it. You know, when I first took, so we're talking about the 5 love languages from Gary Chapman, which has been around forever. And when I first took that, which is really funny, it was in premarital counseling with my wife. And it's 5 love languages. I had a perfect tie with 4 love languages.
Whoa.
and then like a 1.
Lot
And
of
the
love.
1 was gift giving and receiving, right?
Yep.
My wife had an 18 in gift giving and receiving.
That's my wife.
And I was like, oh my God, right?
Oh,
like,
wow.
oh my Lord, Jesus, how
How are we going to do this?
are we going to do? I mean, we had to. You want to talk about why premarital counseling is so important, right? I'm
Yep.
sitting in there and I'm going an 18.
Hmm.
And so I started asking questions, right? I'm like, wait a minute. So it turns out that when my wife in her household, in her family, they never apologized to each other. Her whole time growing up, that wasn't a thing. You didn't apologize. So if you wronged someone, you didn't say anything. You showed up with a gift.
Wow.
And the size and value of the gift was actually matched to the size of the offense.
Interesting.
Totally.
That was your apology, the gift itself.
Yes. So I start realizing all these times we've had conflict and fights leading up to our, premarital counseling, where I've gone in and I've apologized. Oh, I'm so wrong. Will you forgive me? Yes. I'm like, oh, good. And then she's still angry at me. And I don't understand why. And she's waiting for the gift. She's like, it wasn't real.
Wow.
There was no gift. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, this is mind blowing to me, right? I'm like, oh gosh, I got to redo everything. This. Oh man, this is crazy.
You never would have thought of that. And neither would I.
Yeah. So now, when I last took it, like 2 years ago, it was words of affirmation.
Oh, okay.
And it was on the tail end of COVID and the senior pastor leaving and all this stuff. And so we just been through a lot of just conflict and criticism and all this stuff. And so I'd become almost sensitive to like, oh gosh, And so it was words of affirmation. I needed affirmation.
encouragement.
Yeah. So it changes. It'll move on you.
Yeah, for sure. I should take it again.
Yeah. It'd be fun.
We'll see.
Yeah. It may not be that.
It might be a whole new person. Who knows?
It's possible.
Oh,
yeah. Okay.
I like that.
So what do you think? So Orange County, I'm not familiar much with Orange. I mean, I live in LA, but
yeah.
What's the culture like in Orange County? What do you see in Orange County?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you have about 3.2 million people in Orange County. So everywhere from like Brea and Yorba Linda in the north, all the way down to San Clemente in the south, right? It's a big area. It's a largely affluent area, not in every place.
And relatively conservative for California terms?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say we definitely, like Orange County leans more right. Not only right, but more right. Pretty conservative. Largely affluent, especially as you get like close to the water. So Newport Beach, Huntington, San Clemente, Dana Point, those are all like more affluent areas.
Big time.
I think Newport Beach is the 5th most affluent city in the States.
Wow.
So you got a lot of wealth, a lot of means, a lot of resources, which creates a lot of opportunity. You also have a lot of entitlement.
Clearly.
There are a lot of what I'm seeing, specifically from a pastoral perspective, and just as a person, a friend who cares for people in the area, you see a lot of entitlement, and I'm seeing a lot of nominal Christians who call themselves followers of God, followers of Jesus, who go to church sporadically. We're seeing stats show on average it's about 1.5 times a month.
Okay.
And that is, in their eyes, what a relationship with God is. I go to church every once in a while when it's convenient, when I'm not on a trip, when I'm not out of town, if I feel like it. And if I go to church for an hour, I check that off my box and I feel good about it myself. So I think part of our calling, part of my calling is not just to reach new believers, which we have new people come to our church, praise God, every single Sunday, but it's to shake up comfortable Christians that have kind of just gotten caught in the flow of going through this. I'm going to go to church when I want, if I want, and that's what a relationship with God is all about.
So just so you know, that's so the lowering of monthly attendance and the average of when an average church member now goes to church 2.5 times a month. That's a member, not just an attender.
Wow.
So the number has been falling pretty precipitously, and then post COVID fell off. That's number one. Number two, what you're describing, I think a lot of people see, but particularly that cultural Christianity model is so prevalent in the South. And I just went back to South Carolina to see a buddy, and it's just everywhere. It can be frustrating. And at the same time, like there's some good parts to it because it's conservative, like morally conservative or a little bit morally conservative.
Sure.
Like, not really. Maybe politically conservative at this point. And, but at the same time, you're like, man, I'm not sure you know Jesus.
Wow. Yep.
You know church.
Yep.
But I don't know if you know Jesus.
Yeah, that resonates with our experience.
Yeah,
for sure. What?
That's
No, the South actually is the Bible Belt. Daniel, why do you think that is? Why is that the case from your experience?
That the South is the Bible Belt?
Sure.
Yeah, I think there's just been a higher, I think there's been a higher value of tradition in the South than anywhere else. And I think what you've seen is people that have stayed in the South have largely stayed there because they don't like change as much, right? So if you like change, you went west, son, westward, right? You're going to find new things. And so California is the land of immigration. We have a lot of immigration. So we have, we're more of a melting pot. I think you get a more eclectic faith. And I also think you have more adventurous people that moved west, right? They just, there was something in them that said, man, I don't want to stay here. I got to go.
Yeah.
Whereas the South has actually just been, you'll go to the South and there'll be family after generation, and they can track you back 5, 6, 7 generations in the same plot of land.
Interesting.
And so, like, I think they value stability.
Yeah.
I think they value family and tradition. And so because of that, faith has largely been a legacy thing. So it's like, man, I'm saved because grandmama goes to church.
Yeah.
And I go with her.
It's part of your history.
Right. And you're like, yeah, no, that's actually, boy.
Do you think that very reason is also leading towards the average statistics of people in the South, in the Bible Belt, attending church 2.5 times a month? Because it was handed down from grandma or grandpa. It's not fully their own. They haven't created this like sincere ownership. So do you think it's almost giving them like license to go to church when they want to, instead of making that a value?
Well, I think what you get now, so here's what COVID did for everybody, right? What COVID did is it challenged, so you had to stop going to church, most places, right? When it reopened, you had to go, why was I going to church? Why were we going again?
Wow.
And so that question is why the drop.
Yeah.
Because there are a bunch of people that go, yeah, I don't know. It wasn't valuable, or that relationship with Christ wasn't real to me, or it felt like a chore, and I got out of the habit of it, and there's not enough of a relationship with the Lord to get back into the habit of it. Christ is not real enough, and life is too easy. Because I'll tell you this, the reason that church attendance is so high in so many countries where the gospel, where the government is hostile, or the culture is hostile to the gospel, is that is the only place for encouragement. That is the only place for comfort. That is the like you're running to church to go, man, pray for me.
Oh yeah.
It's so comfortable here.
Oh, a few weeks ago, I couldn't agree more. We're talking to doctors in Nigeria who are from Jos, Nigeria. Some of the best people, most like Jesus-loving people you'll ever meet in your life. I'm just asking about church. And they're blown away. They're used to it now. They've been to the States a few times. They're blown away that our services are so short. And I'm blown away that their services are 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, well, how long like is the message? And are there announcements, right? These like silly questions that I would ask. And they go, no, you got to understand, like worship will go on for 3 or 4 hours. People don't want it to stop.
Yeah.
Because we have people who are walking hours and hours from different villages to get to church, because it is the one time a week where they get to get refreshed, connect with God, with other people. It is like their lifeline, where for us, I just feel like it's if I want to go down the street to Mariners, if I want to go to Res Church, if I want to go Discovery, wherever it is, I could sit in a seat. I can enjoy a service for about an hour, maybe 75 minutes, feel good, learn a couple things, but then walk out and not interact with another human being. And I just think it's a totally different experience.
What is? I mean, we have a guy here who one of his early experiences of Christianity was with the Plymouth Brethren. I don't know if you're familiar with that denomination. I was not.
I've heard of them. I don't know much.
So it's like the church is a group of people, and it's all ages. So the kids are included. There's no nurseries, no kids program. There's no program of any sort. You gather on a Sunday. It's almost always outdoors. And there's no real structure. Like somebody has a song, somebody leads, somebody sings this, somebody has a verse, someone has a prayer, someone has a word. And you first you take the Lord's Supper there. Are these you're gathering, you're sitting outdoors, and then you have a meal, and so it's like a 3.5, 4 hour thing.
Wow.
Whoever's going goes. It's organic. I mean, kids crying, and and he loved it.
Wow.
Like just the authenticity of
That's
it,
cool.
the encouragement of it, the genuine faith of it.
Yeah.
And I mean, in some sense, you're going, well, you would need to be genuine if you're going to be there for 4 hours. Like,
Sure.
How many people conveniently are like, yeah, let's stop by for the 4 hour service?
Oh,
I mean, I get that.
Yeah, that's commitment.
We've certainly changed the nature of the expectation of a church service, right? And I don't know if a lot of what we've done is for the better. It's certainly for the convenience, but I don't know that God's real concerned with our convenience. It would be a little weird if God was like, "Oh, let me make it easier for you." Like I don't.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, I think it's coming from good intentions, right? You want to reach more people, but there's a line as well where you can't sacrifice commitment and authenticity and the truth of the gospel message for convenience. And I just think that's something that, we can all fall into. I definitely do at times. One of the things I love that God's doing at our church, right now we're one service, hoping and praying that we'll go multiple services soon. We call it the post, the service after the service. And it's just as much church as anything else, and more community, more conversations, more relationships. And so people will stick around for over an hour, right? Kids will be on the bounce houses. We'll be around the fountain. We'll have that. Coffee and some food, And I think if you don't get that, if you're just absorbing, just an attendee, not a participant, I think you're missing out on actually the very definition of what makes church.
Well, I would even go a step further and say, if you go to 1 Corinthians 13 or whatever, and 12, when it talks about the body.
Yeah, 12.
And it talks about two things. One, every single believer has a spiritual gift. That spiritual gift is a part of the body. And it says, for the health of the body, every part needs to function.
Yep.
So to take that analogy to the fullest, that means that you need 100% serve rate in your church, or your church is not functioning in a healthy manner.
Wow.
100% serve rate. Now, I don't know what your serving rate is. Ours is not 100%. It's not close to 100%, right? Yeah. I mean, so the idea of consumeristic Christianity, like we're here to consume a service.
Yeah.
To review a service, like I'll give you a 3.5 out of 5 stars, or Jackie, that's not this, right? It's not a book club. It's not streaming content. It's not for you to be entertained. You have spiritual gifts for the edification of the body. The Bible says the only reason you have spiritual gifts is for the edification of the body.
Yeah, building people up.
These people right here.
Yep.
And so if you're not using them, Christianity is not a spectator sport.
Yeah.
Right. Everyone's on the team. Yeah. Everyone's on the team. Like if you're in the stands, what are you doing?
What are you doing?
Get down here and get in this thing.
Even like standing on the sidelines, I guess that's a step further than the stands, but dude, get in the game.
Get in the game,
like
man.
Start playing. I just think to your point, like we've just become so used to consuming and not contributing.
Yes.
Let's be contributors. And I love that's a high bar you're setting. We got about 1,000. I mean, ultimately the goal is for 100% of our church.
That's the goal.
To serve.
Yes.
To contribute, to give back, to be participants and not just observers.
I mean, I think this place is to serve before you meet. Like if maybe you're in the process, Jesus is in the process of saving you. You're not even there yet. And yet, you're like, oh, well, let me serve. I mean, we've seen that, right?
Well, if we actually stand by the statement, you can belong before you believe, we have to believe that. Right? Like so many, I think especially in today's age, I think a lot of people are more drawn to Jesus, faith, Christianity, not because of a message that they heard or a friend telling them like in their neighborhood. That happens all the time.
Yeah.
But I think especially with the next generation, they're going to be compelled because of the actions of Jesus followers that are loving the community around them. Okay. And they're actually going to,
Let me ask you this, because this is right at the cusp of a question that I asked you of it, which is what is unique about ministry in 2024 versus like in the past, right? And so I don't care how far you back you want to go, 1970s, 2000s, 2010s, but like what 2024 in Orange County.
Wow.
What are you telling somebody in the year 2000, year 2010 going, no, man, in 2024, in 2024.
Oh, that's great.
You've got to be able to do this to do ministry.
That's great. I love the question. It's not reinventing the wheel.
No.
I just think I'm more convinced about real relationships than ever.
Okay.
Like, I'll just give you an example. Okay. Like in Orange County, there's churches all over the place.
Yeah.
I am continuously blown away that people show up to our church on a Sunday when it's set up and tear down. We have over 100 people on our serving teams right now. We want that number to continue to go up.
Yeah.
I'm blown away by couples and individuals who show up to work and sweat and set up canopies and tables and chairs and donuts and tablecloths and all those things when they could very easily 10 minutes down the road, 2 minutes down the road, pick any other great church in the area where they can walk in, get a cup of coffee, a nice little donut, sit down for an hour, get good worship, quality message, and walk out.
Yep.
Blown away by it. I'm more convinced of the need for real relationships than ever. It's not just because of COVID. A lot of people have talked about that. That's true. That definitely impacted it. We hear this word like authenticity thrown around a lot these days. There's a reason for it. You brought it up earlier. I think the more genuine, authentic relationships that we can cultivate and develop with people around us, that's the game changer. That's what I'm seeing God do in our church. People are coming. I love our worship and our worship pastor, Alan Holt, and the team he's developed. Oh my gosh, they're so good. Is the preaching good? Well, it depends who's preaching. If it's me, if it's Andrew McCourt or somebody else, that's not why people are coming.
You're preaching that. We literally paid you to come preach. Like you preach that well. So like you're gonna end. I'm like, yeah, no, man. I've heard you preach. Let's not get crazy here.
I appreciate that. I just my point is, I don't think it's because of the preaching, the teaching, the worship. As great as those things are, I actually think more people are finding a home in our church, and I'm going to use that word very particularly.
Okay,
they're finding a home in our church, not just to attend, but to be a part of.
Let me ask you, and you may not know this number, and it's totally fine if you don't know this number. How many, and this is kind of a small groups, Bible studies, I don't know how exactly you do it, but how many homes do you think get opened up on a given week to people in your church?
Oh, awesome. I'd say over a dozen on average.
That's awesome.
Now,
I have a conviction that is a move. So when we talk about 2024 versus in the past, churches used to be programmatic, right? So big campuses, lots of programs, bring people in. And I think that can work, but I don't think that's the main thing that works, right? And it goes back to the relationship thing. So I actually think, and I got on this real kick last year, I started really reading about the word hospitality in the Bible, because the word that is translated into hospitality is actually, it's in the Bible way more than I thought it was. How about that?
Yeah.
It's a prerequisite to be an elder.
Wow.
Wait, what? You have to be hospitable. Yeah. And then it's a prerequisite to be a deacon. And then it's actually a command to Christians, all of them, right? And so you get into the early church, and what you realize is you have to, according to the Bible, right? You had to be willing to open up your home.
Yeah.
Which also meant, because when you bring somebody in your home, open up your life.
Yeah.
Right?
It's vulnerable.
Yep. And we got in unintentionally this phase in ministry for 30, 40, 50 years where we did everything at the church. We did it in a classroom.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Not at a kitchen table, not on my couch, in a classroom.
Yeah.
And so one of the things we've been working on is like, I don't want you to meet in a classroom, man. I want you to meet at someone's kitchen counter.
Yep.
I want you to go sit on their couch. I want you to be in their life and be known.
Yep.
Ray Johnson says, if you make 7 friends at a church, right? If someone makes 7 friends at a church, they'll never leave, right? That's the number. Got to give them 7 friends. I don't actually even know if that's true. That might be the number, but I'm saying like you make 2, 3, like close, intimate.
That's it.
Like I know this person. They know me.
Yep.
You're there because there's no substitute for that relationship.
Yeah.
And in 2024, we have a generation in Gen Z particularly that has been told you can live life online. Your relationships can be online through social media, through Discord, through the internet, through forums, whatever.
Yeah.
And that'll be enough. No, it's not.
Yeah.
And they don't know me. They know what I tell them.
Yep.
Right. And I told you this story a while back where I'd met a bunch of people on Discord during COVID through a gaming thing, right? Yeah. And so I was taking a cross-country trip. I'd gone to pick up a car. I had to drive it back, from Virginia to California. And I contacted all these people that I only knew online. And I was like, hey, can I come visit you? And everyone was like, please, right? And I literally drove to these people's houses all over America.
Wow.
And stayed. I stayed in Iowa. I've
When are
never
you gonna
even
go
been
to
to Iowa.
Iowa?
There's nothing in Iowa, right? And I stayed at this guy's house in Iowa, you know, and in early in the year or two, it was so flipping cold. I was like, you know, I went to Chicago through a snowstorm.
Wow.
And it was so the snow was so thick on this freeway and interstate that everyone's doing 5 miles an hour, and he's just pounding I can't even see. I'm trying to drive to this guy's house, and I was like, I gotta go to pee, and I'm running out of gas, and I was like, this is such an adventure. I'm just by myself in this little car, right?
Yeah.
I wanted to know them, right? I want to sit across from them and be like, no, this is the real me, the one you met online.
That's it.
And I think people hunger for that.
Well, they do.
And even if they don't know it, they hunger for it. And when they get it,
I was just about to say that. Even if they don't recognize it now, there's something deep inside of them that I think, I'm going to use this word, is like waking up. It's rising inside of them. We're seeing this in the next generation, right? So when I talk about real relationships and like, what would I, back in 2000, 2010 say about the church in 2024, like prioritize intimacy, depth, vulnerability, real relationships with each other. My wife and I 3 years ago opened up our home to host our college young professionals group.
Nice.
And it grew so big within a few months that we actually launched a new young pros group. We got leaders for that. They're crushing, one of our healthiest groups in the church. Continuing to host our college group in our home on Wednesday nights. Part of the reason, it has nothing to do with us. It has nothing to do with things that I say or what I'm going to lead them through. It has everything to do with the fact that I want these 19, 20, 21-year-olds to actually experience being in a living room together. I love like whether, the 7 friends you make at church, is actually accurate, which I think it very well could be. I think a lot of those deep relationships are cultivated not inside the sanctuary, but inside the home, in the living room. It could be at a coffee shop or a park or wherever, but there's something about that unreasonable hospitality mindset where you're having these students or people, whoever, regardless of age, come in and develop these relationships. That is a game changer.
Right.
I think so for so many, if we're going next generation, Gen Z in particular, right? Like we're scrolling, you can,
swiping.
Oh my gosh, you hopefully in the good ways, you can know 1,000 people online,
right.
10,000 people online,
right.
and never feel more lonely or isolated.
Okay, let me tell you why. Okay, ready? There's a quote that I heard and I went, like one of these, right?
Gotcha.
I was like, oh my gosh. And this is what they said. They said, listen, people might be impressed with your competencies, but they only connect with you through your weakness.
Wow.
And here's the point with online. All we ever show people is our competencies, okay?
Sure.
And so you have this generation that has 1,000 friends, but of the 1,000, all they only know is the things they do well.
Yeah.
And we know ourselves and go, wow, that's not me.
Yeah, it's their highlight reel.
Right. That's not me. I guess none of them have weaknesses, right?
Sure.
Because I don't see them. And so, like, if you want to actually know somebody, they got to know your insecurities.
Yep.
They got to know your weaknesses.
Yep.
They got to know your failures. They got to walk in. They talk about this in dating. If you're dating somebody, you're like, how long should I date? Have you been through tragedy with them? Have you been through grief with them? Have you been through failure? If you've gotten that done, you kind of know them.
Yeah.
It's not a time thing.
Sure.
Right? It's a vulnerability thing.
Absolutely.
And so I think I think this goes with pastoral ministry, right? I intentionally try to find a failure to talk about every Sunday I preach in the sermon.
Yeah.
So when I'm looking, I go, where have I failed? Where have I had to repent? Where have I had to confess? Like I told you a story about chickening out.
Yeah.
I feel like God was telling me to do something and then being a coward. Like I've told that story. Why? Because I need you to know that I'm a coward.
Yeah.
Because if you think that what God's doing in me is because I'm good, you've missed it.
Wow.
You need to know that what you're seeing God do is because I'm a coward. And then you'll go, I'm a coward too. I'm like, yes, and God wants to do things with you too, right?
That's it.
Yeah.
You're giving people permission to be honest and also recognize things about themselves that they may not have seen before. Like I'll use this example. When I was 20 years old, sophomore year of college, getting my resume together, right? Because I'm applying for this internship that I did not get, by the way. And I remember like listing strengths. I had no problem listing some of my strengths, right? Oh, come on, I can do this all day. And then when it said weaknesses, I remember my girlfriend at the time, now wife Allie, goes, well, Ty, give me like 3 weaknesses. I couldn't name one.
Really?
And here's the deal. Most people hear this story and go, oh my gosh, you're so prideful. Well, of course, I'm prideful just like anybody else. I actually think it was more ignorance than anything. I wasn't raised really with like a concept of failure. Failure really wasn't an option in our household. My parents are the best. My sister's the best.
Failure is not an option in this dojo, is it? No sensei? Is it a Karate Kid moment? Is that?
Oh, it is. Yeah. Wax on.
Okay.
And but I didn't grow up with that, and so in that moment, my sophomore year of college, I was confronted with my ignorance of, oh my gosh, I actually think I'm the man. Like, I think I'm impenetrable. Like, I can do anything.
Right.
I remember as a kid, like I grew up playing sports, but my mom wouldn't sign the form to play tackle football until high school, right? And I remember imagining for years putting on the pads. And actually, I convinced myself to think nobody can tackle me. No one can tackle me.
It's not even possible.
You know what's so funny? That mentality when I was like 8, 9, 10 years old carried on till in my 20s. Today in my 30s.
Right.
There are certain things where I feel like I'm invincible.
Clearly.
Yes.
Yeah.
But to be able to find yourself in a living room full of 10, 5, 15 other people, doesn't matter. You're not only hearing and seeing their strengths, their weaknesses, what makes them human, their brokenness, you're inviting them to see your own as well. Because when I got 15, 20 college students in my living room who are watching me struggle at being a dad, trying to balance my family and work life, talk about issues that I've dealt with since boyhood, whatever it might be, that's where real depth and connection occurs.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I remember we were talking about marriage, and I remember talking about the moment I got to just in tears with my wife. I think at this point, probably 2 kids, job, and all this stuff, and just the pressure of trying to be a husband and a dad, and never feeling like I'm living up to it with my wife. Like always feeling like her expectation is different than whatever I can deliver. And so if it's like I need to work more so I can make more money so I can pay these bills because you really need that, and I go work more and then I'm not around and she's mad at so it didn't matter like what. It's a shell game. Wow. And it's impossible and you're insatiable. And it wasn't even her. I could even recognize it at that. Like it's not, and I remember just sobbing going, it's not, I don't even know what you want. And in the moment, I'm like, it's not even possible to have a good marriage.
Yeah.
It's not possible to satisfy you. It's not possible to do all the things that are necessary. Do I just give up? Is that the thing? Or do I give up even, I won't give up being married. Maybe I'm religious enough to go, I won't get divorced, but do I give up like believing that there is a satisfying contentment in marriage?
Wow.
And just go, well, okay, I guess we'll just do life and be dissatisfied. Like I remember those moments, and like the good thing for me is that they drove me to Christ. Like they drove me to this desperation of going to my Bible and going, there's got to be an answer. Yes. It's in here somewhere. I'm just going to find it. Lord, screaming out to the Lord in like just emotional pain of going like, this is miserable.
Wow. Yeah.
And then going, one, God answered those prayers. That number one. But number two, like that is far more attractive, almost in some magnetic, right? To people that I'm talking to about marriage than me telling you about like lessons for a healthy marriage part 1. I mean, like, don't care.
Yeah.
That everyone goes, me too.
That's it.
Me too.
They can resonate with it.
Cool. Let's talk about then what Christ has to say about that.
Boom.
Right.
That's it.
And I think that's ministry in 2024.
Yeah, me too.
Right? You know, every subject, right? Want to talk about sexual addiction? Want to talk about porn? Want to talk about drugs? Want to talk about diet? I don't care what it is. Let's talk about failure.
I'm broken. I'm in need of help, and so are you. Let's admit it and talk about it.
Yeah.
You brought up Mark Clark earlier.
Yeah.
One of the things I love about not just he's one of the best communicators in my opinion, but just who he is, getting to know him more, is what you see is what you get.
Yep.
He hides nothing. And it's not just funny stories from his past, it's current stories of continuous struggles. And you look at a guy like that who's in his 40s, who is smart and author and all these things, accomplished speaker, pastor, and you go, I'm watching this guy like preach to thousands. I saw him at a conference last year at my brother-in-law's church, and I'm watching his vulnerability not only move the room, because it did, people are dying laughing, they're crying, but it gave them permission to say, if that guy is a broken piece of work in need of God's grace, well, I guess I can find myself here in this place. I can admit my brokenness and I can be real with what I'm going through.
Right. Well, and here's what that does too. So all of those things are true. That's part of the kind of the human condition, right?
Yeah.
It also gives God glory.
Boom.
For anything that you see that's not the brokenness.
Yep.
Right? So anything you might see that go, oh, that's impressive. You go, yeah, let me tell you how that happened.
That's great.
Right? Which I think is maybe the most honorable thing that you can do in leading people towards Christ is that he keeps getting the glory.
Yeah.
So yeah, I ministry 2024, that remind me after this.
Sure.
I have a little, I will diagram out something for you about sermon illustrations that you just touched on that I think is super important.
Yeah.
I don't want to forget that. Okay.
Well, can I tell you one thing that you told me a few months ago?
Yeah. Okay.
You told me this story along these lines.
You're
like, where are you going here? Forgive me, because it might have been, I think it was at a men's conference or a men's gathering you were doing.
Okay.
And basically you led the room hold on.
Yeah.
This blew me away. As the lead pastor, you posed the question and you answered it yourself. What is the worst thing you've ever done?
Yeah. Okay.
Here's the deal. I was so impressed and I admired you more than ever in that moment for doing that. And I craved the desire to do that ourselves. And yet I struggled with believing that it could actually happen in our context. And I was sad.
Yeah.
And I go, why? Is it me? Well, it's got to be part of me. Right. Is it our culture? Is it our people? Why can't we get to a place where we can just say, this is me in my worst moments?
Well, let me strip some of the impressiveness off of that story. First of all, I heard it from I heard about it.
Sure.
Right? So that's You're Not Crazy, the gospel culture thing that I've been talking to you about with Orland.
Nice. Yeah.
He did that at a men's conference. And so I'm doing leadership training and I want to talk about vulnerability. And so I think I love ideas. I've got a great idea. I'm like, I'm not going to make people do this because I don't know if they will. I'm with you, right? And so I wasn't going to make people do this. I'm in 70 leaders sitting in a room or something around tables. It's a Sunday night. And I'm like, I'm talking about gospel culture and vulnerability. It was a talk on vulnerability. And I said, all I want you to consider at your table, there are these little round tables, right? I just want you to consider if I asked you to tell the table. Now it's not even one person. I'm telling you to tell the table, but I wasn't going to make you do it.
Wow.
If I asked you to tell the table the worst thing you've ever done, could you do it? How would you feel in that moment? I just wanted them to sit in the fact that we still hide some of who we are, right?
Yeah.
That's all I wanted.
The leaders go.
Yes, I did. I watched them all whoa. Then, as is what I would normally do, I like to walk around and listen to conversations, right? And so I just want to hear the heart of people. And so I sit down at the table, and of course, it's one of my staff members who's pretty young, right? Who turns and goes, "Could you do it?" And I was like, "What? What do you mean? What?" No, I'm teaching. I'm sorry.
I'm the leader.
Yeah. I don't think you've got this correct. I was just here to pose some questions to you. And she goes no, but would you do it right now?
Wow.
Would you tell us right now at this? I mean, she's on the spot, right? And I didn't have enough time to invent a really good Christianese answer to get out of it, which I probably would have if you give me 5 minutes, right? And I was like, I guess we're doing this.
Here you go.
So I just blurt out an awful, horrible, like the worst sin, just a terrible thing I did when I was younger.
Wow.
And I'm ready for people to be shocked and angry, right? This guy's that bad. And all that happened at that table was one by one, people begin to sob and confess.
Yeah.
Sob and confess. So, not only was there not judgment, it was, it's okay to share the thing I've never shared.
Wow.
And I went, well, if a table of leaders all has things that they've literally tell me, I've never shared this to a human in my life, right? I went, holy cow.
Wow.
How much worse does it feel on a Sunday morning that there are hundreds of people sitting in the pews and they all have that and they think, if these Christians knew this about me, they would never let me in here. And I'm like, oh no, you don't understand. Let me tell you about me and then you'll be okay. It's that, right? And I think that's why confession lifts every, it does. The pressure just goes, oh.
Yeah. Well, King David says in Psalm 106 that actually it's through confession that we're healed, right?
Well, it's grinding my bones, the pressure on my bones. He says, the weight of it.
Let it off.
Yeah.
Daniel, I love, leaders go first. We hear that a lot, but it's true. You went first.
Yeah.
You gave, no, but seriously.
Not on purpose.
Yeah, but like God presented you that opportunity. And what I love, and I sincerely mean this, instead of evading it or avoiding it, I got to get back on stage, or giving some superficial Christianese answer, you were real.
Yeah.
And boom, you saw the breakthrough happen.
Well, the work of the Spirit comes at that moment where you go, well, if God's real, if the gospel's real, if I've been absolved of this, if I've been really forgiven of this, then I actually can share these things.
Yeah.
And so there's a moment of conviction too, of going, well, is the gospel real?
Yes. I love that. I just love that story.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's encouraged, challenged me from the moment I heard it. I want to do more of that. I want to lead more like that.
Yeah, and I think so I would say this: if you don't have a small group of people that know the worst thing you've ever done, that's the start. Okay, that's the start. And so here's what I did. I love doing a little bit of mentoring. I have a small group, but I have a mentorship group too. I have 8 guys that I mentor, and we meet every Friday. It's a 2-year thing.
Cool.
So we're about halfway through. But one of the first couple weeks, we got them all in the room. I said, all right, here's the deal. This is the worst thing I've ever done. Wow. We're at a public diner, right? Like, let me speak quietly. The waitress is going to walk by and be like, oh my Lord.
Holy smokes. Who's in here?
This guy.
Yeah, going to spit in your
not
food.
Come back. Yeah. I'll just tip well. So I just blurted out, right? And everyone's like, oh, and then people start going, right? But now here's the thing. If I've shared with you the worst thing I've ever done, nothing's off limits. I can tell you everything else I'm struggling with because it won't be as bad as that one thing.
That's it.
You can tell me everything you've done because we can get this crap out here and I can challenge you.
Yeah.
Now I'm a challenger. I'm an exhorter, right?
Yep.
You're an encourager. I'm a challenger. I'm just who I am.
That's why we get along. You just went with that group 10,000 feet deep in the first gathering.
Yes.
So now for the rest of your life in having a relationship with each other, there's permission just to be you.
Yep.
And to share.
Yep.
There's no judgment. That's it.
And if there is, you go, hey, cut it out.
That yes. Yeah,
Stop
exactly.
It.
Yeah, exactly. You've actually done worse than that.
Yeah, come on. Right. No, it's good. And like what I'm telling you is you foster that. You get your guys and you go, all right, and you lay it out there. And the people that aren't real, you'll know real fast. Yeah. Right? They'll go, and like they may not stick around, and that's okay. They may take some time, right? I didn't ask them. I didn't ask anyone at that table. I didn't ask anyone at my mentorship group. I didn't ask any of them to tell me those things. That's not what I said.
Yep.
I'm going to tell you. Now I feel like I can tell you anything.
Yeah,
right.
That's good.
Same thing goes with like things I struggle with. Hey, I need you to hold me accountable, right? Every once in a while, I need you to ask me about this because this is what I'm struggling with. Ask me, right? And now they know for the thing they struggle with, they can go, hey, will you ask me about this? Will you ask me last time I watched porn?
Wow.
I had a guy, he had just gotten saved. He's like 22, 23 years old, really young. And he's in my small group and he's dating a girl and he's thinking about maybe it's going to get serious, right? And he goes, listen guys, I've never had a relationship that I wasn't having sex in, ever. And I need you guys to text me every morning and ask me where I spent the night.
Come on.
And all of us are all, cool. And literally that guy got texts every morning from like 3 of us. Dude, we've just been like, I was at home. I'd stay at home. It was good. Every night. And like, there was once or twice where he's like, I wasn't at home. I was like, go home.
Go home
right?
now. Yeah.
and it was like,
but that's accountability. That's Christian community, like at its finest.
Right.
And I love that so much.
Yeah.
That's great.
I think the leader has to do it.
Yes.
It might, look, yes, possibly someone else will lead the way. But it's us, man.
Yeah.
It's us.
For sure.
And actually, if you're listening to this, right, and you're like that group, that setting of whatever it is, where you do that, will become now one of the most valuable moments in your week. Like you will look forward to it.
Yeah.
You will cherish it. It will no longer be going through the motions. It will be this thing where like people can't wait to sit back down and go, I know no matter what else happens, what was going to happen in this little setting tonight or this morning or whatever, it's going to be so real. It's going to be genuine. It's not going to be fake. Man, these guys aren't fake. They're real.
Yep.
And yes, It can be some awkwardness. I've had it where there's a guy who's not ready to do that, and he's looking at everybody, and I'm like, yeah. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's all right.
Yeah. So. Well, and you made me think too, like, let's have grace for each other and grace for ourselves. If someone's that guy who's not ready yet, pray for him.
Yeah.
Pray that he will get to the place where he can be ready. Because
we've all met that guy. You're in prayer request time, and everyone's like pouring their hearts out. And he's
I've been that guy.
Pray for my grandma.
Yeah.
She's got a bunion. And you're just like, that's the dude. He just prayed with sleeping with his girlfriend. Like, he's like, well, stop sleeping with my girlfriend. He's like, grandma's a bunion. You're like,
well, it's so funny. I talked about entitlement earlier. We all have entitlement.
No.
And so when you start down this road, even a beautiful road of vulnerability and real relationships, you can become quickly entitled. And anyone who's not on that level, what's wrong with you, man? Isn't it just hilarious and sad how that works?
Yeah.
But it's true.
Having grace with people. That's like having grace for them. And hey, they're messy too. If you could get your congregation to wrap their minds, their hearts, their vision around a concept, and if they did that, man, everything would be so much sweeter for them, right? Yeah. What would that be? What's the thing you wish? Man, I wish they could just grasp hold of this.
Yeah, get outside our four walls. Don't wait for people to come to us. Go to them. Like, the church is the people. It's not a building or an institution. And the irony is, like, we're in a campaign right now of hopefully being able to purchase a new building. But even that, my dream, my vision as a leader pastor of this church is not just to wait for people to come to us. I believe God's going to use our facilities to help facilitate life transformation 1,000%. But I really hope and pray that photos, stories, relationships are born on the streets and the neighborhoods, at coffee shops, in people's homes, all throughout our area. Stop just having this like entitled expectation for people to come and go out and reach them where they're at.
I love it. Hold on.
You can't tell I get a little passionate about that.
We have something like that. I want to read this to you. It's so good.
Awesome.
Let's see, 2024.
Yeah. Cool. While you're looking that up at Bayside, one of our values from Pastor Ray is like, we're willing to tear holes through roofs.
Yeah.
To get to people.
So
and that's from Mark 2.
So I'll just tell you what it says here. We call it reach our circles. And so carpools, cubicles, and cul-de-sacs. Right?
So good.
Reach our circles. Carpools, cubicles, and cul-de-sacs. We believe that one of the most powerful signs that our church body is living out gospel culture is their willingness to engage with those in their sphere of influence. We boldly speak the gospel, but we also humbly earn the right to be heard by serving them and loving them. One of the travesties of modern Western Christianity is the myth that we should separate our lives into the sacred and the secular.
Wow.
The Bible destroys this myth, affirming that every area of our lives should be on mission for Christ. Everything we do should be for the glory of God. And this means that every aspect of our common life is a testimony to a lost world. We are called to live our whole lives as ambassadors for the gospel. In a world where we live artificial lives on social media, simply inviting people into the messiness of our real lives has massive gospel implications. Our conviction as a church is that we should be following the Bible's consistent command for hospitality by opening up our homes and doing missional work at our kitchen table, company lunchroom, and the ride to work with a coworker.
Wow.
So we believe that. Man, I believe that.
Fire me up.
I believe that.
So
like I'm right there with you.
Yes. And what's so great is we have a group of lay leaders, staff members too, but lay leaders who are rising up and they're carrying that forward. And it's so fun to watch, right? Yes. You got Pat and Steve Keishi and the Pattersons who are actually modeling this. And my desire is that for that just to grow and grow and grow. And my hope and prayer is that becomes like the dominant culture in our church. So it's not just like a select minority group of people or, they're like really going after it. That becomes the norm. And if you're not a part of that culture, then you start to feel weird, almost like, what am I doing? What am I doing wrong? I got to be a part of this. So you're dreaming 3, 5, 7 years down the road. What's the wildest dream look like? I mean, what's the wow, look at what God did. Yeah. It's a lot. I want our church not just to be an operating, like having multiple services on a Sunday, which would be awesome.
Yeah.
Right? I pray for that. Absolutely. I want us to have a food bank that we own and operate out of our church.
That's cool.
I want a 7 days a week coffee shop, not just because I love good coffee,
but
but it's helpful, right?
Right.
But also that's where, people are drawn to and conversations are born and relationships are had and all those things. I want our church to be active 7 days a week. And something that I would love, Daniel, is oftentimes as pastors and leaders, right? Like we talk about burnout a lot because we always feel like we have to be the ones doing things. Like we're going to work hard and, God willing, serve our hearts out till the day we die. But I want to equip the saints and empower people to do the work of the ministry.
Right.
How awesome would it be if most of those days Ty wasn't part of it at all, other than just cheering everybody on? Of course, I'll set up tables, do whatever it takes. But our people in our church are actually leading it.
Yeah.
They're developing leaders themselves. They're multiplying disciples themselves.
Right.
That's where I want our church to be. That's it. Because it's not the Ty show. It's not the Andrew show. It's not the Bayside show or the Res show. It is the Jesus Christ show.
Yeah.
Like, welcome to the greatest party you've ever been to in your life.
Yeah.
This is where it's okay to come as you are.
And it's just getting started.
That's it.
Like,
that's it.
Someday you and I are going to sit at the feast, right?
Yeah. Oh,
the final feast.
Yeah.
And we're going to be like, yeah, this is even better.
That's it. Because like what we're experiencing today, God willing, is a foretaste of what is to come, but it's going to blow our minds away. I would love, specifically in like our church culture as well, I briefly wrote this down on the questionnaire. I would love us as Bayside to be okay multiplying churches and campuses where it's not about numbers and attendance and butts in the seats, but it's about the quality of relationships that are being born out of trying to follow Jesus more closely. So are we okay with launching a new campus that has 75 people?
Right.
That has, 200 people, not necessarily 1,000 or 1,500 or 2,500 people. Are we okay with that? Because I actually think in a lot of ways, not just for Gen Z, but I think a lot of people are craving that. They're craving that intimacy, right? Nothing wrong with a big auditorium with 3,000 people. There's a lot of great stuff that can happen there. Praise God for those churches and places. But what about the living rooms with 9 people inside? Yeah. What about the average church that meets on a Sunday that has 50 or 85 people?
Yeah.
What if we multiplied those types of models and the depth and the quality of relationships just went off the charts?
Well, so the Village Church in Texas did something.
Matt Chandler?
When Chandler's church got big, a bunch of churches were like, hey, will you just take us over, right? And so they got all these campuses. Well, then as they got healthy, they're like, hey, you're in another city or suburb or whatever, and you're healthy and you have elders. Like, you don't need, we don't need to run you. And they spun these campuses off as autonomous churches.
Wow.
Right, which is also very Southern Baptist. I don't even think they're Southern Baptist anymore, but it's very Southern Baptist. Autonomous churches is like a big thing, right? We don't have a denomination that tells us what to do. We're all autonomous. Well, so I from that I went, man, I want to plant campuses. But I even more than planting campuses, I want to plant churches where we send pastors and we fund them and we send people and we don't control them.
Yes.
I want to do both, right?
Yes.
So I could see res campuses, but I can see churches. In fact, we just started sponsoring Pastor Derek Berry's church that he's planting in Pasadena. We're not going to run that. It's an autonomous church, right? How can we, because I think I can see gospel multiplication happening faster if I do both.
Cool.
And I think there's an honor in saying, hey, we would love to sponsor the gospel.
Yeah.
And I don't need to be in charge of it. And so like a little of both, right? Some campuses and then also some church plants and stuff. I think, that's my dreams.
Absolutely. 2 things real quick. A year or 2 ago, our senior leaders, Pastor Ray and others, came out at Bayside and said, hey, our vision for the next 10 years is to plant 100 more churches / campuses. And I remember hearing that vision and I'm just going, oh, that's larger than life. That's bold. That's a big, hairy, audacious goal. Let's go.
BHAG.
But then I went, hold on a second, like 100 Bayside churches? Like there's, not that there's anything inherently wrong with that, but is that the dream? And immediately Pastor Ray, and I love his heart, he said, hey, the goal is only for about 10 of those to be actual Bayside campuses. Yeah. The other 90 all around the world, boom, independent churches.
Love it.
And all we do is help support them.
Yeah.
And I said, I can get behind a vision like that.
Here's why. I just had this conversation with someone else. Even us, and we're only about, like 300-400 on a Sunday, right? 300-400 on a Sunday puts us in the top 4 or 5% of all churches in the U.S.
Yeah.
So Bayside even bigger than that, right? Top 2%, 1% of all churches. Yeah. If we as large churches aren't willing to do that, who's going to do it?
Yeah.
Are we expecting the 80-person church to go plant a bunch of churches because we're too busy doing? Like, no, that's us. That's our job.
It's good.
God has resourced and granted all this wonderful stuff for our churches, which are large by comparison, for us to steward well.
Yep.
And stewarding well doesn't mean growing my empire.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's planting, training up pastors, supporting gospel work and like watching God do amazing things.
Yes. So good. So that's like a church mindset. From a personal pastoral mindset, my father-in-law, who's been at the same church, Eastside Christian Church in Anaheim, for 42 years, children's ministry, middle school students, college ministry, family life ministry. He's now been one of the missions pastors, global missions pastors now for a while. Just a legend, a guy I've looked up to my entire life. He's larger than life, dreamer, loves people, all of it. A couple of weeks ago, he and I were talking, and he really challenged me. So here I am, 34 years old, and I'm probably talking to him about like preaching and, influence and all those things. And he goes, Ty, all that stuff's cool, and if God opens up the doors, that's great. But he's like, here's just like 2 cents from a guy who's been in it for a while. He goes, if it could continuously be less about you and your platform and influence, and if you just have started like thinking through and developing a list, it doesn't have to have 100 people on it, but just a list of people that you are regularly pouring into developing and raising up to be leaders themselves, like true disciples who multiply other disciples. He's like, you're going to get near the end of your life and you're going to be able to hang your hat and go, I gave it all I had. And I had my head on straight as much as I possibly could. And by the grace of God, I prioritized well. And I'm not kidding. That conversation, I've thought about it every day. And I'm continuing to pray about it because as much as I love people, the me monster rises constantly and the focus can easily start to become on you.
So one of the things that if you don't already feel this, you'll feel this with your kids is that I think every parent really loves their kids, wants their children to do better than they did. Right? We want our kids to learn from our mistakes. That's why we're trying to train them up. We want them to do better than we did, whatever it is. And so even in non-Christian parents will do better in business, do better in whatever. We want them to do better. And I would say like the true test of a great leader is, can I raise up people that are better leaders than me? Can I raise up people that have more gospel impact than me? Right? Because if I can't, if I never raise up anybody that goes above my level, man, I don't know that I'm actually stewarding my resources well.
Wow.
So I want to train up and I want to train the next Billy Graham, who goes, or the next Mark Clark, the next Ray Johnson, who goes and does way better things than I'll ever do, right? And then I'll go, see, I invested in the gospel in that person, not out of pride, not out of like, oh, I need to be the guy, because man, I wanted to see God be glorified through them.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Oh man, so good. And that's a different mentality. That's a different perspective. I actually believe that's a kingdom mentality.
Yes.
You see Jesus do that, right? So we're not reinventing the wheel. It just goes back to the greatest person who's ever lived. Jesus had his crowd. He whittled that down smaller to his followers, his disciples. He then whittled it down to 12 specifically that he chose to follow him and did life with on the daily for over 3 years. And even then he had a focus 3.
At 3.
Boom, Peter, James, John. Let me pour into these 3 guys and they're going to go change the world.
Yep.
And he even said, sorry, I'm preaching here for a second, it's actually better that I go. For if I don't go, and I can just imagine the 12 freaking out, just like we are when we read that. Like, what are you talking about, Jesus? Like, how could it possibly be better than you? And he goes, right now, I can be in one place at one time. If I leave, the Holy Spirit comes. He can empower believers all over the world.
And watch the gospel explode.
Boom.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah. Anyway.
Hey, man, thanks for the time.
Thanks for letting me be here. This has been great. I love learning from you.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, guys, until next time, we appreciate it. Thanks.